Welcome back, my friends, to AA Recovery Interviews. I'm your host, Howard L., and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where Alcoholics Anonymous members from around the world share their extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. If you enjoy this podcast series, will you do a little AA service work by spreading the word about this rich and meaningful listening experience? It's another helping hand of AA we can extend to alcoholics everywhere. On today's show, my guest, Joanie M., shares a story full of similarities with which many alcoholics will readily identify. Her early drinking at age 14 escalated throughout her high school and college years. It rapidly became an indispensable part of her life during her first marriage. As a young mother of two, Joanie's budding alcoholism became entwined with her home and social lives and caused mounting problems in both areas. Fortunate to have a husband who took over the parental roles that Joanie was increasingly oblivious to, her daily drinking inevitably led to divorce. And, of course, divorce led to more drinking and irresponsibility. As her life became more isolated and miserable, Joanie tried to stop drinking many times. At first, she tried using psychotherapy and multiple treatment centers, only to start drinking again. With few options left and self-loathing becoming a greater part of her existence, Joanie found AA as a last resort. After some fits and starts, she finally caught the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous over 6 years ago and has been sober since. Joanie's journey in sobriety started with lots of meetings and working the 12 steps under tutelage of some great sponsors. Her success has grown into sponsorship of other women and reliably fulfilling service commitments, including involvement in local nonprofits dealing with alcoholism and drug addiction. She continues to occupy her hard-earned position in the spiritual center of the program and demonstrates daily the gifts AA offers to all who seek it. I believe Joanie's story is important to hear for newcomers, old-timers, and folks in between. So get comfortable to listen for the next hour to this week's episode of AA Recovery Interviews with my friend and AA sister, Joanie M.
Hi, I'm Joanie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Joanie. That's what I say back in return.
I like that.
Welcome to the AA Recovery Interviews podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you're able to be here today. What's great about sitting down with you right now is that you and I just came out of a really strong meeting. It's one of the better meetings that I've been going to for years and years. And I know you've gone to over the years as well. And it was a really good subject matter about getting roots in AA.
For sure.
You've got roots that go back a while. How long have you been sober?
Almost 7 years. But I came into the rooms about 12 years ago. And then actually my first AA meeting was my senior year in high school. But it didn't take kind of an assignment after they found some alcohol in the back of my Jeep.
So they thought that one meeting would do it for you?
I don't know what they thought about that. I'll tell you what, it started planting seeds at a much earlier age because I did listen while I was in those meetings, although I didn't relate because they were mostly men and who were drug users. And I thought if I just, drank alcohol, I'd be fine. I thought if I stayed away from drugs, I wouldn't end up homeless. I wouldn't end up under a bridge, and I thought that was the ticket to avoiding all problems, is just stick with alcohol. But so later, fast forward, when I walked into my second AA meeting, I heard more similarities than I could ever imagine.
Sometimes seeds lay dormant for a period of time until they reemerge. You said 12 years ago that was the case for you.
Yes, I had a lot of bottoms and around 2011 and just hated my consequences for my drinking. I hated the way I was feeling. I hated the sort of mother I was. And I had known people that were sober, so I thought, well, wow, I want that too. And if I just go to one meeting, I'll instantly quit drinking, and then that will be it. So when I went to that one meeting, I kind of had a true confessional in front of all those wonderful people, and then I walked out of that meeting and went a few more days without drinking, and then I went right back to it. Then it took me another couple years to come back in and try harder.
Yeah, so you came back. What's your sobriety date?
September 24th, 2016.
Okay, so you're coming up on 7 years?
That's right.
In September?
In September.
Wow, that is so cool.
Thank you.
You know, one of my fantasies when I first came in, there was a guy who came to the meeting that I was in, a men's meeting, about a year and a half into my sobriety. And this guy would come back. He was known for being only going to one meeting a year, and that was on his birthday. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, I can hardly wait until that's me, until I only have to go to one meeting a year in AA. And boy, if I had followed through with that frame of mind, I would have missed so much over the years. It's been a rich experience.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's almost as if the more I do and the more I get in the middle, the happier I am. Whether because when I help people, I'm happier. When I'm listening, when I slow down and I calm down in those meetings, and I believe in it so much. I really do. So if I can feel when I haven't been going to a meeting almost, I'm just irritable, restless, and discontent in some ways. And I enjoy it. I think of it now like the way I think about exercise or going to church. For me, sometimes it takes me a little bit to get up and go, but once I go, I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so proud. I'm a happier person and bring more joy, and and I'm giving it back. Like so many people helped me get sober. I mean, I had lots of sponsors and people that I would answer my phone calls and meet me at meetings and things and rehabs and everybody. I mean, doctors. And now I just feel, gosh, that was such a blessing. I wasn't always doing everything. I kind of sometimes, that's why I kept relapsing, because I would kind of do what I wanted and leave the rest. I wouldn't follow instructions always. But when I finally surrendered and started listening to and doing what they told me, how they got sober, then it started working for me too. And now I want to give it back and pay it forward. But also I want to keep my sobriety. I don't want to ever go back to the way I was.
Don't want to reset your sobriety date.
No, I did that too many times already.
What was your family of origin like when it came to alcohol and drug use?
I have alcoholism all over my family, except my grandmother passed away of it, and I had one aunt in recovery, one in Al-Anon, another aunt who just got sober off pills on her own, and it was on both sides. But I was the last of six. It was his, hers, and I was the ours, and they're all ranging 16 years, and so I basically grew up with two parents and me. Everybody else was off at school or grown, so I was kind of like an only child with all these siblings who were much older. But my parents drank socially. They had fun at parties, but and the occasional mishap, but nothing really. My parents were very loving and worked really hard, and my dad doesn't have a problem, and I think they both had a good time, like I said. But they didn't drink at home. But it was the isms, I guess, were around, but at 14 I had my first beer, and I just knew I was home, and then I was allowed to go have one at Mardi Gras, and then I snuck back to the trough to get another beer, and I ended up getting destroyed and the room spinning and all that. But I knew, I was like, that was the most fun thing I have ever done, ever. And so I couldn't wait to introduce it to my friends, to find it every which way. And I binged from 14 up until I got sober. Some of these people I hear in AA, they say, we try to control it with one or two and maybe would be successful. I could not even do that.
14 is usually a very common age for people to take their first drink or start drinking. So 14, until you tried stopping, you would drink in a binge-worthy fashion.
For sure.
So you weren't drunk all the time, but when you drank, you would binge. Did you black out every time you drank?
Not every time, no. I guess if starting at 14, my blackouts didn't start happening, and they were more like brownouts maybe in college. But after college is when I started blacking out more and more, and that was very scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wanted to revisit something you said earlier about your grandmother passing away from alcoholism. How old were you when she passed away?
I actually never met her. So I just had heard stories from my dad, and my dad even told me my senior in high school, he said, you better watch out, this disease runs in our family. It was in me to think, am I going to have this problem? Just like that meeting, should I look at this? And maybe that's why when I'm in my late 20s that I was able to try to do something about it where, I didn't let more decades go by because I was alerted to the fact that I could have this problem.
One of the interesting things about knowing that someone in the family has passed away, or their demise was alcoholism or drug addiction. There's almost a perverse sense of entitlement, knowing that somebody died in the family from it. We think that we can beat it, and I will be the one that proves that part of the family wrong. They had to die from it. I can do it and not die from it. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that where people, they were so resigned to the fact that because alcoholism ran in their family, that they had no other choice than to become an alcoholic. And you and I both know alcoholic behavior is a matter of choice to a large degree. We choose to drink or we don't. And then the disease steps in and says, I'm taking that choice away from you, and now you're going to drink and be controlled by the disease. How did you find that in your life?
I guess because I never met that particular grandmother. I mean, like I said, I knew that I needed to be careful, but you never think it's going to be you. I never thought that I would end up alcoholic, and I did, like you said. I tried different ways to conquer this on my own, and I watched my friends and I look back at a party now. I had a girlfriend. I'm like, how do I not get so drunk? And she was like, well, try sipping or try doing this, that, and so I would try all these ways, and ultimately I would be more destroyed. For some reason, I was the first person at the party and the last person to go to bed. It was very destructive for me. And so it was fun, but for so long until it wasn't. And then it was like the consequences started. And
for a lot of people, they start early too. Drinking at 13 or 14 is usually the culmination of stuff that comes before that. And when we're children, we find ways to cope. As we get older, we find other ways to cope. And then we find alcohol or drugs.
Yeah.
What kind of things led you up to deciding that you wanted to try alcohol and drugs?
It looks to me that people who drank alcohol, it was pretty normal in my family still to this day, for people to have fun while drinking and dance and be silly and laugh. But I just thought that's what older people do, and that looks pretty glamorous. I want to do it, but now that I'm in recovery, I look back and I was the last of six. There was some drama and dysfunction, and I felt like I still feel this role of trying to be the mediator, and everybody just love one another and get along, and I had my own insecurities, and then I also went through some eating disorder stuff. I think I tried it to do what I thought was glamorous, but when it went down, I felt, wow, this really makes me feel good. Like I have confidence, and I feel like funny and beautiful and fun, and so I guess all those insecurities, I didn't realize that was going to fix those temporarily, and so that's why I wanted to stick with it. But I even remember getting candies at the movies, and or my parents would buy me a big bag of Jolly Ranchers. I'd eat the whole thing in one sitting. I'm still like that to this day, like big extremes. If I'm gonna, I worked my ass off, and I always made straight A's. If I was gonna go jogging, I was gonna run X amount, and I wasn't, it was gonna be 6 miles, not 5.99. Like I had to get things like that, if that makes sense. I work hard, play hard, I guess.
Was there an internal judge kind of spurring you on?
Oh, yeah.
What was it saying to you?
I'm not enough.
You're not enough. So you got to prove it?
Yeah.
And how do you prove it?
Well, I didn't really have to prove it, I felt like, with alcohol, because the substance just numbed me out, and I loved that escape, and I thought it was just, I don't know, I think I just wanted to escape responsibilities and just numb out and from all feelings and just have fun. I thought life was one big party. That's what I wanted it to be. But during the week, I had to clean up, and I guess I was trying to make everything look good on the outside so I could do whatever I wanted on the weekends, and then the weekends became weekdays, and
weekdays, I get that. So 14 is an age at which you're usually in middle school, getting ready to go into high school. When you started at 14, was it on a regular basis, or was it just periodic until you got further on in school?
It was periodic because I just couldn't get my hands on it. And then I went off to boarding school, and for high school, and we would sneak it on the weekends. We would go off in a taxi from boarding and pay a homeless person to buy some for him, some for us, but we worked so hard at school, we just didn't really have access to it, and then I convinced my parents that it would be a good idea if I had a roommate whose mom was single to to live in Houston in an apartment, share an apartment. And while her mom was away working, my mom would come in from Galveston. And when her mom was home, she'd go back to my dad. And so we had this kind of boarding arrangement in Houston. So I went to high school one semester, jumped high schools, and then we had my own condo. A family owned it, and so I was basically unchaperoned a lot. So I lived a lot of my high school life without parents at boarding school, and then parents shuffling around, not really knowing what we were up to. And then they were around enough, but I was so out of control and unsupervised.
How did you feel about that? Feel about your parents sending you off to boarding school?
I always knew I was going because my two older sisters went, so it wasn't like I was a problem child. And in fact, my dad still says to this day, "You were just easy, Joanie." And so, but that was really, they sent me off to have more opportunity, I thought. That was what they had both gone off to school to. And I wasn't messing too much with that opportunity. It's only when I saw kids starting to drive a car and I thought, I did want to party, I thought, just bring me home. Like, I don't want to do this hard work anymore. I want to go do what I thought they were doing, driving, partying. I thought that was where the life was. So
there wasn't as much of that going on in the boarding school environment as you perceived there would be in the public school environment.
There was, but there were restrictions, and I was having some friends get kicked out, and I thought, my parents aren't as strict as this.
Did you ever get in trouble?
I guess my biggest amount of trouble I got was that time I got sent to AA my senior year. I was on a homecoming court. That's when they found my friend's alcohol in the back of my car. But
they didn't find you drunk or anything?
They didn't. They sent me to AA, so I imagine that they knew, but they didn't. I didn't have anything on me. And then my senior year in high school, I was riding with a friend, and we both got arrested on Easter Sunday. And then also at high school called my parents, and they said, she has missed so much school, we may not be able to let her graduate. And I thought, but they said they let me walk because I had straight A's. They couldn't, but that was all because I would call in sick. I was hungover in high school. I wonder who's going to be listening to this.
What's interesting about that is that starts you off early with the belief that you can function while drinking, and that if you can function while drinking, you must not be an alcoholic. I mean, that follows a lot of people into their college and into their work careers, where if they don't get into trouble, or they get into trouble and they get let off the hook because they've done such a good job with grades or with a project at work, then that must mean that they really don't have a problem.
Yeah.
How did you judge your performance?
Just didn't think it was that big of a deal. I kind of thought it was funny. I was like, this happens to everybody. But in retrospect, I think about the feelings, jumping high schools and trying to find friends in new environments, new cities. Alcohol was what I thought brought me friends. But then it left me so empty. Like some of those days when I was hungover or having to, after even the night of after the big party, I thought, are these my true friends? Like, yeah, it was just, we were all a mess. I felt a lot of the insecurities already coming up because alcohol, what it did for me, yes, it was great when I was drinking, but when the next day I would get like such bad anxiety. And I hated it. Just because I worked hard, I was like, well, I'll get through this. And, some of those things don't mean I wasn't ready to quit. It was still enough fun for me to keep going.
Yeah, and a lot of times it is about fun and about keeping going.
And fitting in.
And fitting in, yeah. When you look back at that time in your life from what you know now, is there a point at which you could have looked at your life at a certain time and said, that's probably when I first was becoming an alcoholic, or that's probably when my first alcoholic type behavior occurred?
I would say 16. I had a breakup with a boy, and I think that really was painful for me. And I feel those feelings. I started to drink to cope, and it was like every day during the summer. I remember, and I just would have told my younger self, like, my parents are amazing people, but if I had somebody who could have intervened a little earlier on my behavior, I needed that. I needed that some discipline, because I felt like I left to my own devices, and I was a kid. My brain wasn't even fully formed, and I I thought it was all about fun, and I respected my parents and cared enough what they thought and everybody else to try to still do well, but it's just, I feel sorry for my little self. And I needed more direction for.
But you made it through high school and you graduated. What came next?
I got into UT. I went 4 years at UT.
What was that experience like with regard to drinking?
I drank every night, and it was a lot of fun. and I look back now and I wonder why I wasted my education. I feel like I wish I would have, been more studious. But anyway, everybody was binge drinking, and I took it to, the highest level I could. And I remember there was a professor that called my mom at 8 a.m., which is interesting because I was 19 years old. I didn't know they still did that at the university, but she called my mom and she said, I have your daughter in my 8 a.m. class, and she has smelled like alcohol more than once. And my mom told me about it and just, cringed, but still it wasn't enough it was because I was staying up till 5 a.m. and I had 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock class. I would try to condense all my classes to 3 days of the week, or 2 or 3 days, so I could have those other days off. Anyway, I had strategies all over the place, like most alcoholics, to try to keep up their lifestyle, right?
Yeah, I used to do that too. Get the classes out of the way. But I always planned them for the afternoon because I wanted to be able to sleep in the morning, sleep off whatever happened the night before. Now, when your folks became aware of some of these things that were going on, did you face any consequences from them, or were they doing anything to try and curb what you were doing? Did they sit you down and lecture you? Did they ground you? What kind of response did they have? Nothing
was alarming. My behavior, it wasn't like anything. My dad told me once, "Oh, you'll grow out of this wild partying," and so and after I graduated UT, I hadn't really grown out of it, but still nothing had really happened yet besides that arrest, I guess, that worried them. And even then, they thought maybe that was just one of those things, wrong place, wrong time. I finished UT in 4 years. That was my only option, so that's what I did.
How were your grades?
I got 3.1, I think.
That's still pretty good for somebody drinking every day.
I don't know.
Well, you're naturally smart, then, let's say.
No, I don't know. I just work really hard, I think.
Okay. Well, that'll do it, too.
Yeah. But I had my college boyfriend. He was the one that got away, I thought, and we had broken up, and I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and so I asked my dad, Dad, I'm graduating, and he said, you ought to go to law school. And I thought, okay, I'll just do that. And so I applied, I got in, and within a couple months, I quit because I thought all these people are so smart. I felt like Legally Blonde, and I quit. And my drinking progressed during that period because I went to work for a law firm. Anyway, but I was drinking every night. I was a recruiter. So a recruiter planned the events and recruit the lawyers, and that was a job I thought I was really good at, but I was making name tags, and I felt, I thought I was good at the social, but then I started showing up late to work, and I went to a psychiatrist, and I thought, I'm depressed. I don't feel like I have any direction. I'm putting on all this weight. I dropped out of law school. I disappointed my dad because that was his first. He was like, who is this child who's dropping out of law school? And so that was his first kind of something's wrong with her. And then I had gone to this psychiatrist, and he said, why don't you quit drinking for 30 days and just see if there's a correlation between your problems and your drinking. And so I did it for all 28 of the 30 days.
What happened on day 28?
Oh, we had champagne at La Strada, this joint we used to go on Sunday. But within that 30 days of being on a pink cloud, I enrolled back in law school, and I just decided I was happy, and I still didn't realize that alcohol had been what was holding me back. So I went back to law school.
Did it occur to you at the end of that period of time that things had gotten better and that you maybe ought to stay stopped?
No.
So the idea was get through the 30 days so that you can continue drinking.
I guess I thought I wasn't an alcoholic. I'm like, look, but I stayed sober 28.
Yeah, that must mean you're not an alcoholic.
I would go out to the bars with all my friends still, and I remember chugging like 10 O'Douls, those like non-alcoholic beer.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, crazy. I mean, but so I enrolled back in law school, and I was more serious this time and kind of trying to drink on the weekends and really focus. And then I had a fun weekend, and I got pregnant. So, and then I got married, and then I started having so that changed my trajectory completely, because now I'm in school and I can't drink because I'm pregnant, and those were the only times I could really stay sober up until
that was law school that you got pregnant.
That was when I was in law school. Yeah. So I had both my girls in law school.
So there's a new man involved in these two pregnancies.
Yes, This is my girl's dad, Philip. He's great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, God sent me him, and I love him and his family. I love his new wife, and he was a part of my collateral damage, I feel like. But man, what a gift that Philip is my girl's dad. It's just, something was right with all that alcoholism. So I got something right, and that was Philip.
You guys got married?
So we got married, and we had both our girls. And while I was in school, I had my second during spring break, and then I graduated, and then I took the bar in July. So all that time, I guess to be said, is I was so busy with either being pregnant or studying that my drinking was almost like a sabbatical a little bit, because I did still have bad weekends here and there, where I'd binge and then be ashamed or something would happen, but I wasn't drinking daily.
Did you lay off the sauce while you were pregnant?
Yes. I might have had a glass of wine here and there, towards the end of my pregnancies, but I felt like I was able to control it then, because it was for someone else. For me, I would destroy myself all day long. But
so for a budding alcoholic, what you just described is absolutely phenomenal. To be able to stay in school, graduate, take the bar, raise two babies during that period of time, and still be able to drink once things got back on track.
Well, and I mean, I had a lot of support. I had a great nanny, and Philip was a super dad. My parents were always around. I mean, I don't want to call them enablers, but they helped me do all that sincerely. I mean, put the alcohol aside. I mean, I couldn't have done that even on my best sober day alone. Yeah. So it was all of us, a village, to get through all that.
Yeah, that's different than some of the stories, and I know you've listened to some of these interviews. Some of the stories, it gets to that point where she has two children, but then the husband leaves, and then she has to drop out of school, and then she can't work, and he's not paying child support. Sometimes the same situation produces completely divergent outcomes. It sounds like yours was one that allowed you to be able to weather that particular part of your life.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my parents were really supportive, and I don't know, probably we had the means. I mean, I do think the financial part of it helped, keep the train on the tracks a little bit.
And so it becomes enabling after a while.
For sure,
right?
For sure.
At what point did you notice that you were starting to drink again?
So I had a clerkship with a judge, and I just remember going to that job and I don't understand this. I'm not good enough. I thought I was starting to drink wine at night, and we just bought our first home. And I told her, I said, I can't even do this part-time, so I'm going to quit my job and go be a full-time mom. And because I didn't feel like I was doing anything 100%. Sure. I didn't feel like so I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. But really, for me, that's when my drinking, I could drink whenever I wanted. So, and it usually was at night, and I've tried to wait till the weekends, but then it'd be Monday, and even with disastrous consequences, the days got closer and closer together, how long I was. But I always thought, well, if I just go have a bender, and then I'll sleep off the next night, and then I'll pay all my bills and get everything done and be super mom, and do these things, and then I'll do it all over again. That's how it was for a long time, like a vicious cycle of I just hated trying to, I felt like I was a fake.
Yeah.
Just trying to, I was hungover, feeling bad, going to birthday parties, and it was miserable.
We'll be right back. My friends, if you've enjoyed my AA Recovery interview series and my Big Book podcast, check out Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories from the first and second editions of Alcoholics Anonymous, missing from the third and fourth editions. It's an engaging audiobook that I narrated to bring these stories to life for AA members who've never seen them. These timeless testimonials were originally cut to make room for newer stories in the third and fourth editions. But their vitally important messages of hope are as meaningful today as when they were first published. Many listeners will hear these stories for the first time. Lost Stories of the Big Book is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. It's also available as a Kindle book and in paperback from Amazon if you'd like to read along with the audio. You're going to love it. And we're back. About the time you made the decision to become a stay-at-home mom, to what extent was alcohol and alcohol use and your alcoholism disease talking to you in the background, looking forward to you not having to work every day and being able to be home so you could drink? Or did that never cross your mind?
Oh, no, it totally. I think I told the judge, when I quit, I told her while I was having a glass of wine, I couldn't wait because I don't have to go into work tomorrow because I'm quitting my job. Yeah, it was a lot of it. I mean, I could tell myself it's because I just want to be this, I wanted to just have a break.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to drink and feel hungover if I needed to and not have to report to anybody.
So at this point you're in your early to middle 20s.
This was 25 to 29, really.
Okay.
When I was in school.
Okay,
yeah.
So by the time you were 30, you had the two little girls. How old were they by that point?
4 and 2.
Okay. Did your drinking ever interfere in your mothering duties with those little girls?
I want to say no, only because Philip was such a great dad and he kind of picked up my slack.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, if I would drink wine at night and get them to bed, he would go to bed and I might drink all night or leave and go out to who knows where and sometimes not come home, but he was always there.
What did he think of your drinking?
He didn't understand it and he didn't know how to help me quit. He would say, why don't you just have a couple, then go to bed? It's okay that you're having a drink or two, but just go to bed. And I could never.
He didn't get it, did he?
Mm-mm. And even when we dated, we had dated another period when for a little while when I was in my early 20s, and he remembered when I didn't wake up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for work, and he said he knew back then that I was having a problem with it. But I mean, I guess he saw me shape up some of the time, and it just got progressively worse,
Was that a topic that could or could not be discussed in your home?
It could once I started. I think I need help. And so I would be open with him about it. I'm pretty open and about things, and he kind of was like, yeah, give it a try, but I don't think he was ready to quit drinking. We didn't know enough about it. I don't think either one of us, what AA was. And then I told him, I'm going to check myself into this place called, I had all these ideas and everybody was like, you need to do all that. So the first time everybody was like, why are you going to such extremes and I thought, this is what I need. I need this education. I'm going to get this, y'all. And I kept relapsing. And then finally he was on board. He was like, yeah, you need to go away, Joanie, go away, focus on this, and I'll take care of the girls. And
so you've just mentioned 2 treatment centers that you went to, and I always anonymize them. You said you kept relapsing. Did you keep going back to the same treatment center? Because I know the places you're talking about, if you relapse, you're allowed back a certain number of times. What was your experience with that?
Well, the first one, I definitely relapsed after, and I did kind of the Saturday programs, and then I went off to another one, more of a long-term stay, and through insurance, I figured out a way that I went a total of 3 times, but only to 2 treatment centers. But it was because insurance, I figured out because I had relapsed within a certain amount of time, insurance still covered. So one, I got a freebie. So I was like, I'm going back because I really was determined to fix this problem. But I just didn't know all what everybody did to get sober, just how much. It wasn't just the rehab. It's the daily work. It's the surrender. It's the acceptance. It's, the reaching out to people, the helping others. There was just so much more that I wasn't thinking. I thought it was kind of like a pill. Rehab was like a pill you swallow and you'll get it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, what I've noticed about people who've gone to rehab is that there's a sense of bringing your problem in, laying it on the table and say, now fix this, and yet wanting to not have to be involved in the actual process of doing it. What was your experience like with that, with regard to that?
Well, I mean, I loved it. Maybe it's just because I love to talk, and I was trying to figure out why I was so fucked up. And so I just told them everything, and I had a lot of light bulbs go off. I really enjoyed rehab, and I was trying to figure out what made me drink. I needed all the education. Like I told you, I like to study and like to learn, so I wanted to know, from a biological approach to, I just was eager to understand.
Was there the thought that an intellectual pursuit of the truth and the more knowledge would keep you sober?
Yes, I thought that.
What was the handoff like between the first treatment center that you went to, because I know they do have AA meetings that come in, and the other one you talked about, they too are 12-step oriented once they're ready to release. But what was the actual handoff like for you when you got out of treatment the first time? Did you immediately go to AA, or did you feel like, I've done it, I'm through, I can move on? What was your approach?
Somewhere in the middle. I think when I got out, the first time I got out of treatment, I was thrown back into my small children and being a stay-at-home mom. And I do think it's harder unless you have help and plan out everything and do everything you're supposed to. I was frazzled. I stopped doing the work. I got busy, and then I went back to drinking. Plus, I don't know that I was ready to accept it. Oh, and I filed for divorce because I thought that would be a good idea before I got completely sober.
Had he been giving you not only the financial support, but had he been giving you what you needed all along, or was there something missing there that created an environment that you needed to get a divorce?
I've always been kind of restless, and Philip and we dated on and off and had a shotgun wedding. So throughout all my heavy drinking, it was like I kind of was saying, I'm going through all these struggles, but you're going to be my first thing I blame. Like I'm going to clear the slate. I'm going to clean the slate for you and for me, because you don't deserve to be with an alcoholic wife and who's having, I wasn't a very good wife either. And I deserve a clean start. And maybe you're the reason I drank, a little bit. And maybe this will be easier because I'm kind of like was always the grass is always greener, and like a geographic person. I'll think, well, if I'll do this will be more fun. And so, like I said, Philip was collateral damage, and he...
Did you find any evidence for the belief that it was because of him that you were drinking?
Yes. The moment our divorce took like 7 months, and the moment we signed the paperwork, I went out, and it was like around my birthday time, and I had a really bad night that night. And then I woke up the next day, and I thought, now I'm divorced, I'm alone, I don't have anyone looking out for me, coming home late and stuff like that. Anything could happen to me. I have these small children, and here I am with the same problem that I've been having for years. Like, it wasn't Philip. So I realized it quickly.
That must have been a hard realization to come to.
It was, and my girls were really sad because they didn't want us to be divorcing. There was a lot of, besides just trying to quit drinking, the pain and identity crisis and changes, just the change is very difficult. It's a grieving process giving up alcohol. Well, I was going through the same thing, and I had completely shattered my marriage and my girls' hearts. So it's hard to stay sober.
It's hard to stay sober. There's a lot of reasons to continue to drink, even though the drink is the reason why the problems are continuing.
Exactly.
That's an enigmatic situation. So when you finally got divorced, how old were the girls? I want to say 6 and 4. Okay, so they're 6 and 4. So they've seen and to some degree been able to understand in their limited child understanding of things what was going on. What kind of effect do you think seeing you drinking and what was going on with your husband, what kind of effect do you see that having had on them?
I feel like they don't remember the drinking as much because we've always kind of been silly and danced, but they remember the cigarette smoke, the balloons of cigarette smoke, and so and it being stinky, and one of my oldest daughter does remember trying to wake me up. I mean, this is depressing for me to say, but like smelling of alcohol, she remembers that smell. And there was a time she had to take my boots off. She remembers that, but they don't really remember. Thank the good Lord. I mean, I'm so transparent about it now. We talk about everything, and and they're getting to the age where there are these high school parties, and it's scary. It's because I just know how loose of a leash I had, and so I'm trying to figure out that balance of how to. That's another story, but.
How do you approach that, though? Do you consult with other women in the program who have children that have gone through that? Or what's your approach trying to influence their behavior without being overbearing?
You just reminded me that I should call some people in the program. But I've just talked to the other moms and tried to kind of be true to myself and tell them, what's important for me and my home and why they need to worry about it more than others. And I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but I just, try to keep the dialogue open, but so they know there are also going to be consequences, and not because I'm alcoholic, I mean, it's because they're underage, and it robbed my potential so much. I still look back and I'm like, if I wasn't drinking and on all those weekends, and I could have done so much more. I mean, I'm glad where I am today, but at the same time, I mean, I do think alcohol and drugs take a lot out of you and rob your potential.
That's right, and that's the missing wish of most sober alcoholics, is that the decisions that they made, the actions that they took, all resulted in something that would have been so much different if only they had stopped drinking then. So you're in your early 30s at this point.
Right.
You're divorced. You've got the 2 little girls. What's next? What do the next several years look like? And how close are we to the point at which that 12 years ago that you got sober for the first time? So
we are at 2013. I decide that I don't need to go back to rehab. I just need to throw myself into the program. I decide I'm going to get really serious about it. And so I'm 6 months sober, and one of my girlfriends I've met in the program tells me there's this really handsome guy at a 12-step meeting. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go to that meeting. So anyway, I dove into my second marriage, but at the time my new relationship. I wasn't quite sober. Both of us relapsed all over the place. It was messy. It was what everybody says don't do. Don't get into a relationship in your first year of sobriety. So
isn't that kind of ironic, meeting somebody while you're both sober in AA, only to have both of you kind of coming in and going out? That's got to be tough.
And we were married by the time that I finally thought, we fight a lot, and we have 4 kids under 10, and it was difficult with being in a blended family and trying to figure out all of our emotions. And I thought the last time I drank, we had gotten so bad, I thought, I'm not gonna go through another divorce unless I'm sober and making that decision. So I was like, I'm gonna go to 90 and 90, and I did everything. So, and then after about staying sober 9 months, I thought, this is something I'm doing for my life. I'm not doing it to decide on my marriage. Like, this is what I've needed all along. And this is like a gift for my life, the gift of sobriety. And so I just hung on, and I haven't had a drink since.
So that's that 7 year ago period. So between the 12 years ago and the 7 years ago, what was going on in that period of time? You were
a good 5 years from 2012 to 2011, 2016. I had gone to three times to treatment. I was in and out of AA meetings. I would pick up a chip. I had a year here. I had 9 months here. I had 7 months here, whatever, 30 days, 60 days, and then I would keep relapsing. And it was demoralizing because, there was a part of me that really wanted it. I never woke up from a relapse and thought, I still want to continue this. I always wanted to quit. But it was sometimes felt like a train I couldn't stop when I wanted to drink.
And you were doing AA at that time.
Yes, but very, it was on my own program. Like, I mean, I had different sponsors, and I would do mostly what they told me. But the truth is like the acceptance piece, I think, was missing in some of it. And I think my feelings would just get so big, and it was such a part of my life since I was 14 that I really had to understand that no one told me I was going to feel bad. Like I thought all this meant that I'd be happy and joyful all the time and at peace. But when the bad feelings would come, I just didn't know what to do with them. So, but over time, it was I learned that I wasn't going to feel great all the time, and that it was okay, and that sobriety wasn't, it was going to get different, not always get better, right?
Right.
But I had all these signs. I mean, I would say a prayer. I'm going to drink tonight, God, and if I'm really an alcoholic and need to be doing this, give me, just a couple signs. Nothing too bad. Like I would,
like not being able to get the cork out of the bottle, something like that. And literally like 10 signs. I'd lose my purse, my car would be, whatever. I mean, I could count all these things. Another thing that would happen was, it's just why I know this is such a blessing, is that there were times when I'd just be about to relapse and I'd be in the cashier's line at Randall's or at CVS buying my cheap wine. And someone from AA would be like, "Hey, Joanie." And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like, are you kidding me? I just want to go home and drink my wine." And that happened at CVS. And then another time, I bought all these bottles of wine and I put them in my trunk. I opened the trunk when I got out to my house, couldn't wait to drink my wine. It just rolled out of my trunk, crashed on my driveway. So I feel like it was like God telling me, like, this has got to stop. You've got to do something different. And but the feelings that I hated myself every time I drank towards the end. I mean, I wasn't going to kill myself, but the feelings were so. I prayed. I wish I would wake up dead, because I just hated everything about the way I was living. That must have been tough.
Yeah, it was just this, and then it was like fence climbing during that purgatory period, 5 years. It was, I had 1 foot in AA and 1 foot out. I didn't really belong anywhere anymore. At least when I was just drinking, it was like, part of the alcoholic group or part of the drinking group. And then, but because I so wanted to be here, but I kind of still wanted to be here, I just felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And so finally I thought, I've got to pick a team. It's either this and death or, or institutions or to hop on this sobriety train. And I also lost a friend during my sobriety. One of my closest friends died at 9 months into my sobriety, this last 7 years. And that was a real turning point also.
What was happening with regard to the relationships you were having early on in AA that wasn't sufficient to make you want to stay stopped?
I wouldn't put it on the people. There were people who were lovely and wonderful. I mean, occasionally, like, you're not going to get along with everybody in every group. And there were some things that drove me away. When you're trying to get sober and someone hits on you, like, that's not good. That was a couple times. Like, it didn't happen often, but, that I would just be like, I'm really trying to focus on this. And so, but the women were lovely, and I made some wonderful friends, and they would, oftentimes take me, more times than not, they would say, "Come on back. We don't shoot our wounded." I just wish, like I said, I would have known that the feelings don't always stay peaceful and pink cloud. You're gonna, and life's gonna show up. And I had a sponsor said that once said, like, don't drink no matter effing what. And I love that, because even today too, I try to use that, because I'm like, it's so true. You just, if you don't do anything right all day, if you just don't drink, that has to be, your proudest moment, if it's just to go to bed sober, even if everything else goes dead wrong. But
well, it sounds like during this 5-year period, you were in and out, just in and out. Did that happen a lot? Did you pick up a lot of desire chips?
Yes. In fact, that's why I feel like so comfortable maybe in this program, because I don't even know that I specifically have a home group. I tried to go around to hide my chips, but I made friends all over Houston in these different groups. So once I finally got sober, I feel like I know a lot of people, but everybody welcome me in, and I had a friend call me the little engine that could, because she was like, I'm so sorry you keep relapsing, and I was like, but I wouldn't give up. Maybe it was because my Christian foundation or something, that I felt like I'm forgiven. I can have a clean start. I can start over, and I love the people in AA. They weren't judgmental, and we laughed about all of our bad behavior and knew that we could start over and become better people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it wasn't the people that made me go back out. They were lovely and wonderful. Mm-hmm. It was my own, I don't want to say psychosis, but you're an alcoholic. That's what makes us I wanted to drink. I was like, no other feeling compares to this this completely just checking out, and numbing all sorts of I've had a surgery since, and I'm like, I think I'm the only person who looks forward to surgery, probably more, because I'm like that. When that anesthesia, knocks you out, I like to be completely knocked out because I don't think or something.
I've had the same thing occur during my sobriety, knowing that I was getting general anesthetic and not so much looking forward to it, but knowing what it was going to do and not being too bothered by that, because you don't have an alternative. When they're going to do back surgery, you are either under or they won't do it. So you've got no choices there. But what you're talking about is that the people saw the potential in you, the little engine that could. They knew that if you stuck around long enough that sooner or later you'd get it. Can you talk to me about sponsorship and what importance that might have played in your finally getting sober 7 years ago?
I've had amazing sponsors. They kept my secrets. They worked the steps with me. They let me call them as much as possible.
And when you slipped, what was their response?
They never fired me. They let me continue to work with them. But I think they left it up to me a lot of times to be the one, you need to pick up the phone and call when something because a lot of times when I'd want to drink before a relapse, I wouldn't call. The feelings had already built up so much and that was one of my traps, is that I would not go to a meeting when the feelings were starting to come, and I wouldn't call somebody during that time. I called them any other time when I felt like I was on, but when the bad feelings, I don't want to call. I didn't want them to talk me out of it. I was going to do what I wanted to do. People felt sorry for me because, why didn't you call? Why didn't you? But it was just a part of my story. I was not completely ready. I thought I was. And I remember a sponsor said, "Are you ready? Do you never want to drink again?" I'm like, "I think so." Because I always wanted it, but I didn't have the willingness to do everything and to just deal with the feelings. And
so somewhere that came true for you.
Yes, I finally had to feel so sick of myself and my behavior that I was willing to do literally everything.
So tell me about the final days leading up to that last sobriety date of yours.
I had a year of sobriety, and something really upset me, and I drank, and then I was having a hard time getting back on the wagon, even though I was kind of trying. So I thought, I had planned this. I was like, I'm going to get my mom and sister in town. Those are going to be my babysitters to look out for my girls. And I'm going to order food so I don't catch anything on fire in the kitchen. I had all these plans. I was going to arrange for some fun with my kids, with this babysitter's going to come. I was trying to plan out all this stuff. And that was going to be my last time. Maybe not last time. I didn't know. I had gotten some wine, and everybody showed up, and I drank on my back porch like I did, and I was not going to leave. And husband number 2 was hunting at the time, so I thought he's not going to, give me a hard time about this. And at some point, I let everybody's taken care of, and I let the door open for the delivery to bring our food, and the dog got out. I lost the dog. I know, so I thought, oh my gosh, and it was his dog. So I was on foot looking around for this dog drunk in my neighborhood, and I had run into a couple neighbors, and so we found the dog. But by the end of the night, I was in this person's house that had found the dog, and I just had a lot of shame. And then my mom and the sisters were like, it was pretty bad. You crawled to the bed, and I thought, man, I just can't beat this. I've tried everything for this to be okay, and to take care of. And so I thought I surrendered or something. I think I just finally was desperate enough, but it was in my soul, It wasn't because I'd been arrested. I, had failed everything, made tons of mistakes, but for some reason it was that that next day of just feeling totally beaten down.
So would you call that feeling of being totally beaten down and that realization of what had been going on, were those your moment of clarity or your turning point for you?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. This was such a slow process for me. I'm amazed when these people walk in and it's their last time to drink and, pick up a chip and say, I'm done. Because for me, I just wrestled with it so much. And I felt like, I've graduated this, I've done this, and I'm a good person, and this and that, and I'll do everything. And I don't know. It was something that needed to take place. That's why I so believe it was, God finally gave me the gift of desperation maybe, or the surrender, I don't know, because, a lot of people don't ever quit and think, I feel like this is such a gift to be able to go. I was always looking for purpose, and who knew that what I thought was such a curse was going to be such a blessing.
Did you get a sense of finality there when it was that you came in this time, that at last you would be able to do this, or did it still seem a little elusive to you?
No, I did not, because I was so scared of it and my own tricks I would play on myself. I didn't trust at all that this was necessarily the last time, and still to this day, I have a real healthy fear of it, because I'm like, I don't know, I could get sad enough, I could get hungry enough, lonely enough. It scares me, because it is a disease of the mind, I think, that tricks you into, I've read the big book several times, and I don't know that I never say never, but I never want to go back. Obviously, this is something I love being sober. I don't want to.
So having that realization that that's what awaits you if you're not vigilant about your program, what sort of things are you doing on a daily basis to keep that feeling at bay?
I read a prayer and meditation every morning, and I definitely talk to at least one sober person, whether it's an old friend or a newcomer. I serve on the board. I go to meetings. I need to call my sponsor. That's what I need to do more of. I was just thinking, I read material all the time. Because of this program, it's deepened my faith so much that I've gone back to my roots and Christianity, and so I do a lot of work there. So, but I just try to do everything that I started doing in the beginning, the 5 things, right? Like read the literature, call your sponsor, meetings, prayer, meditation, help others.
Yeah, that's right.
But I wasn't, after 9 months, that first time of this 7 years, I had 2 bottles of wine and some cigarettes in the back of my trunk, taking my girls to Galveston. So I would go to Galveston because I would know I'd have somebody to look out for my kids, because I didn't want anything to happen to them while I was drinking. I always had all these plans.
So you planned to drink 9
months in.
9 months in.
Yeah.
You go down there, in your mind, you know you're going to be drinking and blowing 9 months of sobriety.
Yes.
What was going through your mind about that?
I was on the road, and I had this plan, and I said a prayer, and I'm like, why do I find myself here again? And please, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, if you can help. I had told my oldest daughter kind of understood, and I told her, I was like, I think Mommy and I are gonna my mom, we're gonna have a glass of wine, and my daughter goes, please don't drink wine, Mommy. I was sorry, I'm gonna bawl. Yeah, so I was like, and that point on, I threw those bottles away, and I didn't drink, and so.
Well, I talk about God working through other people, right?
I know, yeah. And then, like I said, one of my best friends ever, we just ran together since we were about 8 years old, and she passed away of pancreatitis, and we had to go through all that stuff with her, and so I just had all these different turning points of like, I've got to keep going. Like, you can't do this. So I went through another divorce. To this day, I know that the pain I will experience and have experienced since I've been sober, nothing will make it worse than drinking. Becoming sober and, all the connections and friendships I made has made my life so rich and purposeful, and my spirituality is just everything to me. I'm like, why would I want to go back and make whatever I got going on today worse? Like, people are proud of me now, I'm proud of myself. It's something that, like I said, I thought was a curse at first, and it's been just life-changing.
I've seen you, we've known each other because we served on that same board. I never knew the depths to which you had gone to get sober, and this is fascinating, the story to me, to be able to hear you say it in real time. It sounds to me like you had this spiritual awakening somewhere along the way. I want to ask you, if you compared your spiritual condition prior to getting sober this last time, and let's say in the midst of being sober, the years that you've had, the 7 years, comparing then to now spiritually, what would you say? I
think I found God in all of this. I remember first AA meeting 2011, and everybody's saying the Lord's Prayer. I just bawled. I cried. I just felt, it's just so humbling to walk into this room and find all these amazing people that are willing to take me in and realize that I guess I always felt like God was there and that I was forgiven and that I could have, if I wanted this and if I worked hard enough and met God halfway, that He would deliver me from this. But I think I weaved in the 12 steps. I think it's the people in the rooms are God's hands and feet. I mean, I always say that, probably in every share I say that, because I really believe there's so many people help me, and I'm so grateful for everything in my life. And I could be at the worst place and still find reasons to be grateful because I'm not back there. My God was alcohol. Alcohol I used to cope for everything, happy times, sad times, mundane times. And I didn't realize that, yes, it was a coping mechanism, but, I believed in it, it was my God. And so when I walked into the rooms, I thought, this has completely, almost destroyed my life completely. And now I'm going to go back to what I knew growing up that was, something I already believed in. And I felt, oh my gosh, like it was eye-opening. And and I feel like I've had a lot of spiritual moments since.
That's a really special feeling too, isn't it? Have you had the opportunity to sponsor some women along the way?
Yes, not very many.
What's that experience been like for you while you've been doing it?
I love it. I mean, I really like talking to people and sharing my experience. I don't sponsor. Maybe it's because I'm a regular and about going to meetings because of my schedule. Through my work at that organization and sharing the luncheon, sharing my story, people find me. I'm very open about it. I will tell anybody. I'm in recovery. I don't drink anymore. If and people find me. So while I haven't taken anybody through the steps in a long time, I feel like I get phone calls and emails all the time. And I'll meet people at meetings and just whatever they want me to do. But
that's a good sign of a program well worked, when people feel comfortable reaching out to you for the help that they need. I saw your opportunity to share your story when you helped co-chair that event that you and I are referring to. I had the opportunity to do that a number of years before then.
Oh.
There weren't very many dry eyes in the room when you shared your story, and I understand now why, even though I knew it at the time. We're going to wrap up here, but one of those questions I wanted to ask you, I don't know that I've ever really asked it in this way, but if you were sponsoring a woman right now who is working their program the way you're working it and was doing the kind of things that you were doing in the program, what sort of things would you suggest to that person to do differently or more of or less of?
Oh gosh, such a fully loaded, with my brain, oh man, I was so stubborn.
In what ways?
Well, I was skeptical of people a little bit telling me what to do.
Really?
Yes, because they would say certain things like, if you don't do this, you're not going to stay sober. But it would be like one minute detail, not the whole. So, people are still people, right? So I guess I would just tell them to trust the process. You're not going to relate to everybody. It's just like a bunch of people thrown in a room. You're not going to be everyone's best friends, different personalities, but listen for the similarities. Things might get worse before they get better. You're going to have to endure some feelings and do what they say. Go after the people that you believe you want to be like, because that's how they told me to find my sponsor. If you want what they have, do what they do, and find your sponsor that way. Do you want what they have? And I did. I walked in those rooms, and the laughter, and the friendships. I thought these are real deep connections. And I love how it's hard for me actually to relate outside of AA sometimes because people are so superficial. I'm like, let's be vulnerable. Tell me about something real.
Let's say you met a newcomer in the program and you had one shot at them to say something that might make an impact on whether they came back or not. You had 30 seconds or a minute to say something to them, knowing that you might or might not ever see them again, and they're brand new. What would you tell them?
Oh gosh, that's 30 seconds I'll never see them again. I loved when someone said, you never have to drink again. Like I said, trust the process. I think to me, they gotta want it. I can't do the work for you. I can't, no one could do it for me. I had to want it and accept it and surrender to this, to to this deal. And so you can do it. Believe in yourself. I believe in you.
That's a really loving thing to say to somebody you don't even know, is I believe in you, and you've just met them. You know, to me, that shows maturity in sobriety, when someone can say that eyeball to someone else and say, I don't know you, but I'll do whatever is necessary to help you.
For sure.
I mean, where else do you find that kind of thing? Everything else has strings attached to it, doesn't it?
I know, it's amazing. It's true. And it is amazing what people will do for one another in this program. I love it.
I do too. And I love getting to know you better.
You too, Howard.
I see your earnest desire to help other people, and I see it in the meetings that you and I go to together. And it's an admirable quality and something that I think we can all be grateful for, that there's a woman there who is willing to do what she does for people. And if I ever run across a woman who needs another woman in the program to talk to, can I give her your number?
Of course. Yes, I would love that.
Good. That's a good sign. That's a good thing to say, too. I want to say that I honor and respect your sobriety, and that I love you, and you're a good person, a good friend.
I love you, too. You have been around since my very first meeting. I've never forgotten you.
Thanks, Joanie.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
It's where God wanted us both to be today.
For sure. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope it helps somebody.
Well, my friends, that's it for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. I want to thank my guest, Joanie M., for sharing her story, and thank you for tuning in. Of course, you can listen to all my interviews in this series by following this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, and other podcast providers. Or tell Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa, play AA Recovery Interviews podcast. Or visit our website, aarecoveryinterviews.com, to hear more than 120 episodes of AA Recovery Interviews. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs, and no one receives financial gain from the show. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back.